Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about whether or not you should consume different calories on your training days and rest days, what situations I would recommend doing so or not doing so, and also going along with that, just how many calories does lifting weights actually burn. So to first preface this video, I think it's important to just discuss how many calories that weight training itself actually does burn, since the majority of my audience is, interested in lifting weights, becoming more jacked and whatnot. And a lot of people who have this question of, should I eat more on my training days and less on my rest days, comes from that, obviously we are exercising, so there is a higher energy cost to performing that activity than if we were to just sit around doing nothing. The reality is that weight training itself is just not a very energy expensive endeavor, especially bodybuilding and powerlifting training. There is a research review called Mass Monthly Applications in Sports Science that is directed and written by people with PhDs that study this, that know it really, really well, who basically, it's a research review, so they look over several studies and they will on a certain topic. So in this case, how many calories do you actually burn lifting weights? And they will kind of review studies and come together and come with a conclusion. In this one particular study that they reviewed, they took basically 50-50 men and women, and like a 50-50 split, and they put them through a resistance training workout, a low volume. Half of one group got a low volume program, and one of them got a higher volume. Basically, what they found is that people who were in the lower volume workout, they only burnt about 100 calories per session, was about the mean. And then for a higher volume workout, they burned anywhere from 150 to 300 calories. And this is basically dependent upon body size. And so this is a really, really important thing to understand, is that when you're lifting weights, you're really not burning that many calories. You could basically extrapolate it down to you're burning about 7 to 9 calories a minute of actual lifting weights. And if you think about the nature of weight training, it's a lot of just, it feels really hard because it's anaerobic. The energy system is glycolytic. It has a lot of fatigue accumulation, so while you're doing it, it is really hard. Obviously, nobody's going to say, doing a 5-rep max on squats is not hard. However, it's just simply not very energy expensive for your body to actually do, as opposed to walking around. Because with weight training, you're doing less than 30 seconds usually per set under that tension, actually training. Whereas if you're doing something like a walk, you're constantly moving your body weight around, and so you're going to burn around the same amount of calories per time that you spend weight training as you were to go on walks. So, but for that hour or two that you're in the gym, you're not constantly lifting weights. You're resting a lot. Let's say you're doing 20 minutes of actual training for every single hour that you're in the gym. Burning 7 to 9 calories a minute, that's 140 to 180 calories per minute. Per hour that you're in that session. And that's something that you could literally burn more if you're to just go on a 30-minute walk. So the whole purpose of weight training is not to burn calories. It is to get much stronger, to get more muscular. There's a ton of really, really positive benefits of weight training. You have improved bone mineral density, so the actual density of your bones when you're growing. You have basically, for lack of a better term, you're building your bone bank until you start aging, and then you're going to have, your bone density is going to get less and less. You're going to have more muscle mass. You're going to be able to actually improve your mobility, provided you're using proper range of motion, yada yada yada. Prevents sarcopenia, muscle wasting when you're aging. All sorts of really great things. And obviously it makes you stronger and more jacked, and that's what we all want. But the main goal of it is not to burn calories, and you're not burning a lot of calories lifting. One other thing I want to mention, because people will say, well, there's exercise post oxygen consumption. Basically, there's a recovery cost from weight training that happens after it. That's like basically dick. Like, it's like 10 to 30 calories like per day. Like, it's not that much. Like, unless you really mess yourself up, like I say, you're overreaching me. Like, but even then, you're only like burning maybe 50 calories, like maximum extra over the course of the day. Like, that is literally nothing. That is a 5-minute walk at a brisk pace. Okay, so we're not talking about that much. But going roundabout to the main topic, should you eat more calories on your training days or your rest days? So if you're training frequently, if you're training 5 or more days a week, I would say absolutely not. For in most cases, as provided that your activity outside of the gym is relatively similar. And a lot of times what people will find is that on days that they don't train, they'll kind of automatically just move around more because they aren't as tired from that training. So a lot of the times the energy balance is going to be more or less the same. Also, it's not super important, especially when you are active on a frequent basis, like 5 to 6 days out of the week with hard weight training. Like, if you have one day where you have slightly less calories burned, it's not going to make a huge difference with your body composition. And plus, you need to remember, like, muscle growth, it happens over time. And if you've actually put in that cascade of events for muscle growth to occur, like, remember, you're actually building muscle when you're not training. And you do need to have proper fuel. And if you're eating less and potentially in a deficit because you overestimate your calorie burn from lifting weights on your rest days, well, you're not going to really be able to recover to the best of your ability and set yourself up for a good training week. So if you're training frequently, your activity levels from day to day are very high. They're basically, or not high, they're consistent, more or less the same from day to day. I would say don't worry about it. If you are, and now going back to, well, what if I train less than 5 days a week? I would still say that the more or less the same things do apply. However, it's going to be a little bit less important if you're training like 3 days a week and you have like 2 rest days or 3 rest days in a row. Like, you probably don't need to be eating like a ton of extra calories on those days. But at that point, I would say personal preference. Because it all comes down to the average calorie intake over time relative to your average energy expenditure over time. Because remember, body composition change doesn't happen in just like one day to any noticeable extent. Especially building muscle, and you're not going to gain like fat from, like, if you had one day and you're like 100, 200 calories above maintenance. Like, God forbid, you'll probably burn off that fat in your training sessions anyways. So I would say that don't overthink it. I recommend in most cases do not cycle your calories, because for clients that I do assign because of personal preference, because that is the main reason, like, if somebody just prefers eating a little bit more on certain days and eating less on their rest days, like you having slightly higher calories, like eating like 500 more on your training days, and you train 3 to 4 days a week. Well, okay, at the end of the week, because that calorie average has to be the same over time, because again, it's the long-term calorie intake relative to expenditure that determines body composition changes. As long as it's basically more or less the same, you're not going to make that much of a difference in the long term. So my main takeaway for you guys here is, 1, weight training doesn't really burn that many calories. Stop lifting weights to burn calories. It's futile. If you want to burn calories, do some cardio, go on a walk. You'll be much better in use of your time. 2, if you are active on a consistent basis throughout the week, you have a relatively stable levels of activity. In other words, from training days and non-training days. Don't cycle your calories. Just eat the same. Keep it as simple as possible. If you prefer to eat a little bit more on certain days, on your training days, and would like to eat a little bit less on your rest days, that's okay. But make sure that your day, that you know your calorie maintenance, and at the end of the week, the averages equal that. But yeah, that's basically the whole point of this video. Don't really overthink it. Remember that weight training doesn't really burn that many calories. As long as you're eating at calorie balance, the average around your maintenance, that you know that it is over the span of a week, you're going to be okay, and don't really stress it that much. In the study, actually, they included a calculator for energy expenditure, so I'll include that in the description box down below if you guys are interested. It's basically a regression equation that takes into account a few stats, and you know, load lifted, volume, height, whatever, to give you a rough estimate of how many calories that you do actually burn during like a weight training session. But anyways, I hope this video was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one later. Also, wait, if you guys want coaching or programs, hit me up, links down below. Follow me on Instagram. Yeah, that's it.